Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 NFL video as I'm supporting the New England Patriots shirt. Today we're going to be looking at the top 10 most impactful NFL suspensions of all time. And yes, there's been a few like season long and year and career bans and all that will make this list, but the fact of the matter is this is just practically a list of the ones that were very impactful indeed. And yes, there is one affiliated with the Patriots. You can probably guess which one it is. But anyway, he is on this list. All right. Number 10 is Plaxico Burress with his 2 years away from the league. Now, Plaxico Burress was a star wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He also was a good receiver for the New York Giants. Of course, he's the man who's got the winning touchdown in Super Bowl 42 as the Patriots lost to the Giants 14-7, and it was like 14-10. Sorry, it was one of the worst Super Bowl losses of all time, especially with me with the Patriots. I mean, there's other Super Bowl losses that sting, but this one really stung the worst. As you know, it just wasn't meant to be. But yeah, unfortunately, though, after a few years after this incident, this game, Plaxico Burress was in a nightclub and he had a shotgun in his pocket. He actually ended up trying to handle the gun, and then it set off in his. He thought he had the safety off, but it he shot himself. Fortunately, though, he was okay, but unfortunately, he was given a prison sentence for concealing a firearm and, of course, significant time. It was a 2 years away from the league. That for Plaxico Burress and all that. Number 9 is Calvin Ridley, the 2022 season. Calvin Ridley was a star wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. I think he played for the. I keep thinking he played for the Lions, but that's Calvin Johnson. Yeah, but Calvin Ridley was a pretty good player himself, and the Falcons really needed him for the 2022 season. Unfortunately, he wasn't there because he had bet on NFL games while injured from the team, and you know they gave him zero tolerance for the whole gambling thing. He's lucky that he didn't get a lifetime ban, a la Pete Rose. But the fact of the matter is that Calvin Ridley ruined it by gambling. Now he saved himself by not gambling on games that his Falcons were in, his own team is. If he had bet on his own team or against his own team, he would have been dead meat. But yeah, he didn't do that. So he was saved a big suspension. He was just given a 1 year boot. So anyway, that was huge and all that. And of course, the trouble with gambling is now with these gambling websites being everywhere, like, an advertising hordes in all four major sports, and, the advertisements during those games and all that, it was bound to happen. I mean, baseball's had some ones. Emmanuel Clase, one of the best closers in Cleveland history. I say Jose Mesa. I know I shouldn't say that, but yeah, Jose Mesa, I feel like the best Cleveland closer of all time. Like Clase, he's booted for sports. That guy from the Raptors, uh, Deontay something. Ayrton? No, I don't know. His name doesn't really sound familiar, but yeah, he got a massive NBA suspension because he was basically booted for betting on prop bets on himself. And the NHL, Shane Pinto was gone half a year for the Ottawa Senators because of the gambling. But yeah, you kind of knew that was going to happen eventually in all the sports. Number 8 is Vontaze Burfict, given the rest of the 2019 off, 12 games. So he had a lot of player safety violations. Burfict did. Unfortunately, though, in 2019, with a hit on the Indianapolis quarterback, I don't know if it was Andrew Luck. I have to take a gamble here, take a good look here. Because it was like one of the worst feelings in the world. Like he played for Cincy and then he signed the 1 year, $5 million deal. And then then Burfict, playing for the Raiders, played against the Colts, and it was Jack Doyle who Burfict made the helmet-to-helmet hit on while he was the tight end. And the next day the NFL suspended Burfict for the rest of the year and all that. It was actually, yeah, they were not sure if it should have been that, but anyway, he was booted for the rest of the 2019 season without pay, which actually was the longest um in in season suspension for on-field misconduct. The record was 5 for Albert Hainsberg in 2006 when he basically stomped on Andre Garade of Dallas and almost gouged him with his spike. But yeah, for Burfict screwed up, and basically the NFL was sending a message. Number 7 is running backs gone bad, a twofer, if you will. Adrian Peterson and Ray Rice. Um, Adrian Peterson in 2014 got sacked with a massive suspension. Well, AP was a pretty good player. In 2012, he was so close to the rushing yards mark of Eric Dickerson, falling 50 yards short. And then in 2013, he was injured. Unfortunately, in 2014, he was injured. And then, worst of all, he was indicted off the field in an incident in Texas when he was accused of using a switch or like a wooden branch, if you will, to punish his 4-year-old child. In the South, that is something that usually happens and all that. Unfortunately, though, it just doesn't work well because it's deemed to be child abuse. I mean, a good spanking actually works out, but hitting someone with a tree branch, don't you know how hard a tree branch could be? And what if the tree was deceased? Fortunately, though, AP made a plea deal and all that, he avoided jail time in a sense, but the NFL booted him for the rest of the season. And he learned his lesson. Family Guy made jokes about this, of course, too. And of course, Ray Rice, a few years later, was punished because there was a TMC video of him hitting his fiance and abusing her in an elevator. And that was just bad. And Goodell decided to boot Ray Rice, and his career effectively ended. Although he was a good running back for the Baltimore Ravens, he just had some misconduct. Now, of course, it pissed me off because the fiance stayed with him with all those hitting and all that, and I felt like she was just after his money and all that. She was just for his money. But the fact of the matter is that it was just love, and I can understand love and all that, but love does not mean beating the shit out of your fiance and basically being booted from the league. At least that's one good thing Roger Goodell did in his life. Because number 6 was one of the bad things he did was Tom Brady's 4-game suspension for Deflategate. Now, during the 2014 AFC title game between the Colts and the Patriots, the Colts said that the balls seemed to be underinflated when they played it instead of the Patriots. The Patriots beat the Colts easily. I think the Pats would have easily beat the Colts. Bad footballs or no bad footballs, but Goodell was not too happy with it, and the Patriots went on to win the Super Bowl, and he was not too pleased about it. So he decided to boot Tom Brady for 4 games in the first 4 games of the 2015 season because of the inflation of footballs, because he kind of was guilty of it. However, it was upheld and it was basically stricken off the books. So Brady played the whole 2015 season. And then the next season, Goodell basically said, no, we're giving you a 4-game suspension, like it or not, for 2016. And a lot of Patriot fans, like yours truly, probably thought that Goodell was just trying to screw over the Pats because of how good they are and all that. And basically, it was just a punishment by rooting Tom Brady. And maybe the other 31 owners were hitting his fucking ear saying, you ruined the Patriots or you're out the door. That's what I thought. The joke was on Goodell because A, the Patriots were 3-1 in the 4 games without Brady. Pretty good. And B, they won the Super Bowl, although it was that 28-3 comeback against the Falcons. If I were a Patriots player, Goodell presented the trophy. I said, get your fucking ass off the stage and basically throw him off the stage. It would have probably gotten you a prison sentence, but it would have been a message to Roger Goodell. You fuck with us, we'll fuck with you. Sorry, weird fantasy. Number 5 is the suspension of Myles Garrett in 2019. this wasn't in the same game as perfect, but later on in the season, in November, during Thursday Night Football between the Browns and the Steelers, it was a tough game. Browns beat the Steelers. However, close to the end of the game, Myles Garrett decided, for some strange reason, to take his helmet, swing it on Mason Rudolph of the Steelers, the quarterback, and struck him. Fortunately, Mason Rudolph escaped serious injury, but man, that was just terrible. I mean, you strike someone with a fist, that's one thing, but with a helmet, that's really bad. All that. And Garrett got suspended for the rest of the season. He did make up for it for, trying to do some things off the field in the 2020s, but the trust in him was not really there. And now he's in LA with the Rams. So yeah, that was just pathetic, swinging a helmet. I mean, if you swing a fist, it's one thing, but a helmet, ugh, you can't do that. So anyway, number 4 and number 3 are kind of one and the same. You have Paul Hornung and Alex Karras both out for the 1963 season. So Alex Karras was this great player for the Detroit Lions of Greek heritage. He was a great defensive player and all that. Unfortunately, though, he was booted for the entire 1963 season for gambling and all that. It wasn't proven that he bet on the Lions and all that. He bet on other games and all that. That probably would have saved him from a lifetime ban and all that. Alex Karras would play a few more years for the Lions, retire at his peak, and then he would actually go into acting and found his then wife, his new wife, Susan Clark, in a movie about Babe Zaharias that they both were. Alex Karras was Babe's husband, George Zaharias. So Alex and Susan married, and then they were the leads in the famous show Webster. For the first few seasons was in the Chicago apartment, and then Webster blew it up with a chemistry set, and then, why is London trying to call me? Sorry. Why are they upset? Yes, I know London, Ontario is kind of Alex Karras territory, but fuck. But nevertheless, yeah, so Alex Karras and then were in Webster. They went into this Victorian mansion and all that, managed to get it with all the stairwells and all that for hijinks and all that. It was kind of close to science fiction, if you will. But yeah, it was kind of weird. And then, of course, you got Paul Hornung. Paul Hornung was the Golden Boy, winning the Heisman in 1956, despite the fact that Notre Dame Fighting Irish were 2-8. They were pathetic. And you give him the Heisman? Yeah, it could have went to someone decent. Even one of the Oklahoma guys, like Tommy McDonald, went Oklahoma on that winning streak. Well, anyway, Hornung was the Golden Boy. The Packers drafted him high in the draft. He was their star running back for a while and won an MVP. But in 1963, same thing. He had gambled in NFL games. Fortunately for him, he didn't bet on any games he was in or his Packers. So Hornung and Karras were basically booted for the 63 season. Two legendary players. It was, a landmark decision. It says even elite players could lose a full season for conduct and all that. No one's above the game. Pete Rozelle did a good job with that early in his tenure. And then, of course, Hornung would be back with the Packers, lead them to a few more NFL titles, and was partnered with Jim Taylor and all that. Eagles kind of clashed, and Jim Taylor went to the Saints. Hornung would stay with the Packers. I think he went to the Saints. I don't think so, but yeah. Poor Hornung was a decent player. Number 2 is the effectively lifetime ban of Art Schlichter. It wasn't completely a full lifetime ban, but anyway. Art Schlichter was a star quarterback for Ohio State. Basically a passing quarterback when Ohio State was all about the running game and all that. Woody Hayes would make sure of it. But of course, Woody Hayes was booted in 1978 for that punch in the, I would say the Peach Bowl. But what was that bowl in 1978? Ohio State versus Clemson. I would say the Peach Bowl, but that can't be right. But anyway, it doesn't matter, does it? Anyway, yeah, he did that thing, and then Ohio State went to a passing game and all that. Schlichter was needed for the Baltimore Colts because they needed him to do well. So they finished the 81 season in a bad spot, and then Schlichter was still on the board. So they picked him up for the 1982 season, hoping he would help out. Unfortunately, this was the season for the NFL to lose regular season games for the first time by a strike. There were a few strikes, but they were in the off season. But nevertheless, Schleister sucked as the head coach in 1982. The Baltimore Colts were dismal, 0-8-1. They only played 9 games. The Baltimore Colts had one tie. It was the first winless season since 1976 with the Bucks. But it was only 9 games, but still, it was just pathetic. And he did confess to losing his signing bonus trying to pay off gamblers and all that. And he would be more interested on the out of town scoreboard than on his own team and all that. There was a lot of trouble for Schleister. And then in 1983, he was basically booted for the entire year. Well, Baltimore's 1982 season was so bad, they had the number one pick in 1983, the year of the quarterback, and they drafted John Elway, who didn't want to go to Baltimore for many reasons, including how the Colts franchise as a whole sucked. And one thing that people forget is that the Colts had Frank Kush as head coach, and Kush was known for his bullring practices for Arizona State in the Pac-10, where John Elway was from, Stanford. So he knew what he was doing. Colts sucked. They traded Elway to Denver. Baltimore left for Indianapolis the next year. Schleister was in and out of being reinstated, and all that. He got caught 3 times for gambling, and by 1987 he was practically gone. He went to arena football, but never played in the NFL again. He bounced around other football leagues, and he also bounced around prison, being incarcerated 30 times in his life. And number one, without one shadow of a doubt, was Michael Vick's indefinite suspension in 2007. Michael Vick was a star quarterback for Virginia Tech. He was good. He led them to the BCS final, although they lost to Florida State. But Michael Vick was a great quarterback. And in essence, Atlanta sold the farm to trade with San Diego to get the number one overall pick. And they actually traded their first round pick to San Diego for theirs to get the number one pick to get Michael Vick. It worked out for San Diego too, because LaDainian Tomlinson also was the San Diego first pick, and he worked out. But Michael Vick was great. In fact, in Madden 2004, he was almost unstoppable on the run attack. You wish you had not played Atlanta. You would have to force him to throw. Nevertheless, Vick was good and all that. Unfortunately, though, Vick had a few distractions. He had a few injuries. And worst of all, in 2007, it was found out that he had bankrolled in a kennel that raised fighting dogs and all that, a dog fighting operation. Vick was partially involved. He wasn't super involved in it, but bankrolling it was just one bad thing with his personal conduct. The worst part about it was that the NFL didn't really need to suspend him. He was suspended mostly because he was in prison. He served almost 2 years in jail in Kansas, in Leavenworth, and Michael Vick admitted it, that, the prison changed him. He changed his way of thinking and all that. He was reinstated in 2009. Not many teams wanted him. The Eagles went to pick him up in 2010. PETA basically picketed him for his dogfighting thing. Of course, Michael Vick couldn't own a dog for years. But Michael Vick tried to fix the problem. He did have a comeback season in 2010, but fell flat afterwards. At least he didn't play for the Pats. But it was one of the league's defining personal conduct moments that should never have happened. And Michael Vick is lucky that things weren't worse. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.